So welcome everybody to another episode of Jake's Take podcast. Today I have two very, very interesting guests. I wanted to bring them on because we had a very brief chat about what they're doing in the space, how they're doing it, and just what's going on in their life right now. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. It's unique to me. I haven't heard of something quite so similar to this before. So I said, I have to have you guys on and make this happen. So today we have Mark Gonneau and David Atwell from HoneyTree.
Hey, Jacob, how are you? Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, guys. I appreciate it. So right out of the gate, right, I want to hear about HoneyTree and what HoneyTree is, what you guys are doing with it. Mark and I've just scratched the surface over coffee conversation and where that name came from. Let's start there. So what is HoneyTree?
Sure. So HoneyTree is a private equity real estate company. I founded it in 2017. I was an eager real estate investor working in the movie business. Prior to that, I was also a beekeeper. That was something that people found interesting when I was working in film. You know, I was just this guy selling honey on set, and I became the bee guy, right? And shortly after that, I was buying real estate, doing deals, and people started asking me to invest their money with me. I was doing quite well in real estate. And so, growing a money tree, investing in real estate is like growing a money tree. You got to plant those seeds and take care of it, but it does grow. Right. And so that's what HoneyTree is. We're a real estate investment company.
Okay. And then just let me walk that back a second. So you said you were in film.
Yeah.
Did you film anything I would know of, or is it?
I worked on some major productions. I mean, the city of Toronto is very fortunate to have the film industry. There's over $2 billion worth of production happening each year just in Toronto. The biggest one I worked on was Pixels. That was an Adam Sandler movie.
Okay.
I was the construction accountant on it. I worked in construction accounting for about 10 years.
So I got a funny story for you because I was an extra in Pixels.
Get out of here. Really? Down at Pinewood Studios.
Yeah.
In 2014. That's hilarious. That was such a fun show to work on.
If you pause the battle scene at the end, I'm
on University Avenue there?
Guys coming out of the truck.
Oh, get out of there. Yeah, that's hilarious. Small world, eh?
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, it honestly just kind of came across, right? Like I had a friend of a friend who's like, hey, man, I'm doing this. Like, do you want to be an extra for a day or a night, I would say, because we were there all night. But
yeah, that was on University Avenue, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Right downtown. Yeah, and you had all the mini Pixel Pac-Man cars.
Yes.
That was really cool.
Funny.
Well, I was in the background adding it all up.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. And what about you, Mark? Have you been in any film or TV?
No, I'm actually not from the TV world. That being said, my wife is in the film world, and she's been on a number of productions. Degrassi was something she did for a little bit.
Amazing.
That's a different story. She was actually on there at the same time as Drake.
There we go.
Oh, that's cool.
Good. So at least we rounded it off. So we're all in the same field then. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get back to what I wanted to talk to you guys about and just and dive into that. So HoneyTree kind of name came from the beekeeper selling honey. That's amazing. And so when did you guys start? And I know you mentioned it kind of just came out of having people invest with you, David, but when did things really, kind of kick off for you? And how did that journey look from there to what you guys are doing today? Because I know a little bit about your investing background, but let me know.
Yeah. So I started investing when I was 24. I bought my first student rental in the city of Barrie. It was only $275,000 at the time. I just looked it up. It just sold for $980,000, which is hilarious. I sold it back in 2016. But it was about, 2016, 2017, I was really shifting gears into multifamily. I did one of the Key Spire weekends. That's actually where I met Carmen and started wanting to get into multifamily. I quickly knew I needed a realtor. The realtors I had worked with were not cutting it. So I asked my property manager, and she said, I have to call Mark. And Mark did such a great job. We killed it on our first deal. And so I immediately brought him in. I said, Mark, you got to be in this company. Help me grow it. And let's go buy some multifamily deals and really make this a thing.
Right.
So that was about year 6 or 7 of my real estate investing career, when we really shifted gears and started getting into some bigger projects.
Right on. Okay. And And I always ask people to do that. I say I think my last episode is the same thing where I said, did you ever see what your property is selling for now? The one that you sold, 5 years ago. And it blows people away. It's the market's just amazing. So.
I'm still happy that I sold that, because that capital I moved into other deals just did way, way more.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. And Mark, what about yourself? So what were your beginnings to real estate? I don't think I've actually ever asked you that, and I probably talk to you at least once a week.
Yeah. The long version is the first time I started looking at real estate, my brother had to drive because I still didn't have my driver's license yet. But first purchase I made, we realized when I'm 15 that I didn't quite have enough capital to buy something meaningful. So we shelved it. But then when I was in university, ended up buying first property. It was a 3-bedroom semi in Toronto that we put in what was admittedly an illegal 2-bedroom basement apartment in it. My roommate and I bought it. My brother helped us out with the mortgage. He became a financial partner, I guess. And we lived in that while we went to school. My roommate and I lived in the basement. We rented out the 3 bedrooms to other classmates, sold it when we graduated. And from there, sort of went out and played in the real world and started investing after a few years. I invested for probably about 7 or 8 years. I'm a little older than Dave. Bought my first 100 doors roughly. My brother and I took 7 years off after my daughter was born, my son was born. And that was sort of around the time where Dave suggested that we join forces and start taking down some bigger multifamily stuff.
Right on. And so what's the special formula today then? Right, because that's why we're here. I want to talk about that, and there's lots more to come. But I wanted to give everybody a little bit of background on you guys, just so they know, hey, who are these guys? If they don't know you already. Yeah. But what's the special sauce now? So because I know there's some exciting stuff happening.
What we started out with. Both Dave and I started out with student rentals. I've done single families. I've done flips. I've done burrs. I've done triplexes, duplexes, multifamilies. I've done pretty much just about everything. But now we're on to something altogether new.
Yeah.
And I'll let Dave take it over.
Yeah, for sure. And then Mark, I'll give you the plug when I say, I speak to you once a week, right? Because if I have a question when it comes to investing, I like to bounce it off of you. I think we always have good conversation, good theories. So, I totally understand why David said, hey, come on board.
Yeah, that's really gray hair. The wisdom comes in handy.
Love it.
Yeah. So, to answer your question about the secret sauce, one thing that Mark and I are really good is creating that BRRRR strategy and finding ways to increase value on real estate, but also taking it to a bank and pulling that capital back out. And so that's something that was really important to us when we initially started investing in multifamily. The problem is with cap rates as low as they are and the valuations, so high, you need so much capital, you need so much equity, and it sits there for so long. On top of that, renters, they know this. They're not leaving their units as quickly. It's so hard to get that NOI up. And so this was even apparent back in 2018 when Mark and I started on this journey. And so the first thing I did was I got to go to other cities. I got to look at other markets. Toronto is just too hot. I'm frustrated. So I booked a flight. I flew out to Montreal because that one really caught my eye. This was 4 years ago. You're still getting good multifamily at a 5-6 cap. I really wanted to see it. And so, I booked a trip, saw what was out there. And one of the things that caught my interest was actually the hotel I stayed at. It used this concept of digital concierge. And that was something that was completely new to me. I chose this hotel because it was the best listing, it had the best location, and had the best price. And when I got there, I was wondering, well, how did they do this? How do they have so much value? And it's because there's no staff on site. Everything is done electronically, done remotely. And so that was really what caught my interest the most. And so we came back to Toronto, started chatting with people, started chatting with Mark, and we said, you know what, let's do this. Let's start finding hospitality products. Let's start investing in this new concept of digital concierge, of contactless hospitality, and turn this into our product. The problem is no one ever sells a hotel. They're great businesses. They make so much cash. And so we looked for 2 years, and you know what, we're like, let's just stick to multifamily. Maybe we'll go down to the States. This is January 2020. I just quit my job in film to focus on real estate. I just said, Mark, let's just stick with multifamily. We're not getting any hotels. Lo and behold, the pandemic happens. And suddenly there's hotels everywhere. I cannot believe how
timing.
I cannot believe how serendipitous it all was to leave film and then to get into hospitality.
Yeah.
So that's really the beginning of what our secret sauce is and why people would want to check us out and talk to us at HoneyTree is this really cool asset class that's really newly emerging and that we're acquiring very quickly.
And let me ask you, David, it's interesting that you guys focused on hospitality, because that's one of those, that's not the standard trajectory, right? When you look at your multifamily investor, the duplex, the triplex into the commercial side, and usually they stick with, just larger and larger doors, 100, 200, 300. And it's very interesting that you guys made that switch and said, we're going to look at hospitality, because it's what was that? Like, what made you comfortable with hospitality? Because that's a question I get from investors a lot is, they say, oh my gosh, well, hotels are so volatile, or they're this or that. And it like, I'm an owner of a campground, which is a little bit different than a hotel.
Amazing.
So I see where you guys are going with it, right? I'm not trying to knock it, but it's a common thing where people say, oh, why that? Right. And so what made you guys comfortable to take that step?
So we don't like risk, and buying a hotel, that's a risky investment. One of the most important safety nets is that every one of our units has a private kitchen and a private bathroom. So it looks and feels like multifamily. This really is an Airbnb licensed multifamily building. Even when we go to the bank to finance it, it's being appraised as multifamily. Yes. And they know full well that it's going to be operating as a hotel. And that's where we get good bank money, good 75% loan to value, and we get that big cash flow from that hotel operation.
And that's exactly what I was looking for you to say. That's perfect. Yeah. And so it's interesting then. How does that work with zoning when you guys look at that, right? Because if I went and just bought a hotel today.
Yep.
And again, you guys let me know as much as you want to talk about. Again, you don't have to share all the recipe or all the ingredients to the secret sauce, but whatever you're comfortable talking about. But if I was to go buy a hotel today, down the road, and brought that to the bank, right? They're going to look at it and go, well, this isn't an apartment building. What are you talking about? Right.
You're absolutely right.
And so is it the fact that you're putting in the kitchens or
so there are a couple things. So zoning has to allow for residential as well as commercial. Right. In fact, we just did an appraisal on a Quebec City deal, and we're putting in 17 studios, but the zoning actually only allows for 8 apartments.
Right.
And so that's fine. What we do is we present it as 8 large apartments and appraise it as such. But at the end of the day, we will actually operate it as the hotel. Now, one thing that's super important, we're targeting Quebec specifically because there's an organization known as the CITQ, which is the Center of Tourist Information in Quebec. And every one of these properties have to have a CITQ license.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why we love this, is because it's so difficult to obtain. They do not issue new licenses, and it's really there to preserve affordable housing. In the past 10 years, so many people bought up condos and houses and took housing off the market to run as an Airbnb. Quebec spoke up and said, we're not having that. You're contributing to our affordable housing crisis. Only these specific properties can have hotel guests. And that's the only way to get on the Airbnb platform.
Right.
And so having that license really is another one of our secret sauce, that we can actually run this as a hotel, and the zoning allows for residential.
So you've beat out the competition essentially. Well, the city's done that for you, and now you're coming in. Okay, I get that. Yeah, and I think that's the first time, Mark, you and I spoke about it, right? As we were talking about Airbnbs. I dabble in Airbnbs. I have a couple cottages and working on a couple more. And I think I was talking to Mark about the South Bruce Peninsula. So that kind of Sable Beach, Owen Sound area, they were imposing a tax, a new tax, which is fine, right? I'll take the tax all day long, but where does that tax go to, right? Or where's the next thing after the tax, right? So it's the tax what starts, then it's the couple more complaints, and all of a sudden the city says, okay, well, we're only going to, allow it in these zonings or these areas. Then it slowly becomes, Toronto and Montreal or Quebec there, where it's all of a sudden it's almost no, right? Unless it's your own property.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things, like you think about a lot of investors that would listen to this show have done duplexes, have done single family rentals, and a lot of them have dabbled in doing Airbnbs. And if you think about all the people that bought condos in Toronto and ran them as an Airbnb and saw that you could get significantly more cash flow. I mean, it's more work, yes, but you do get more cash flow out of an Airbnb than you do out of a normal monthly rental. But then the city came along and shut everybody down. So that's where, for us, one of the biggest things, as Dave mentioned, is that CITQ license. We want to make sure that what we're doing is legal and will never get shut down.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a big thing that we look for. At the same time, as Dave said, we have multiple strategies here, which is one of the really big things that I like. I mean, between Dave and I think I'm a little bit more conservative one. And what I like about these products is I can operate them as a hotel, like as a short-term rental. I can also operate them as a long-term rental. We can rent these out as normal apartments, and there's nothing that stops us. So it's one of those things where by having the license, we're allowed to rent daily, but there's nothing that stops us from renting monthly.
Right.
Whereas the converse isn't true. Whereas if I had an apartment building, I'm only allowed to rent monthly. I'm not allowed to rent daily.
Right.
So it gives us that flexibility. It gives us a bunch of different strategies and a bunch of different exit strategies. So that's something that's really important as well.
And Mark, so when you're doing the long-term rents, is that a landlord and tenant board? Does that come into effect when you're renting it long-term?
So it depends on how you set up the lease.
Right.
And so we make sure, from our standpoint, we make sure we set up the lease so that it doesn't.
Right.
So it's very much that these are simply hotels that are being rented for long term.
That's another great question, because we spoke with our law firm at length about that, because one of the hotels that we bought had longer term tenants. As soon as the pandemic started, the previous owner put in month-to-month people.
Right.
But because it's zoned as a hotel, because it operates as a hotel, it actually can never technically be part of like the landlord tenant board in Quebec. They can never be considered residential. Right. So we're invoicing on a monthly basis, and it does not apply to any landlord tenant laws.
Perfect. Yeah. And that's because that's something I've looked into myself, running the Airbnbs, and it's, if I wanted to do, let's say, that over the winter rental, right?
Yeah.
How does that look? So we went down the road of getting a, short-term rental agreement or a hotel stay agreement rather than a lease agreement, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And is that looked at differently in Quebec than Ontario?
Yeah, very specifically in Quebec. Like it's a completely different legal system out there.
Right.
And so I wouldn't be able to comment on Ontario for that, but in Quebec specifically, a hotel is a hotel. You don't actually live there. And it actually segues perfectly into the next reason why we love this is one of the fastest value add strategies that you can acquire. When you do a multifamily value add, it takes 5 to 10 years for those units to turn over. And sometimes the tenants are never leaving. We can close business on day one, spend 6 to 9 months renovating it, and relaunch and refinance that thing right away.
Yeah.
So not only are we getting a great bump in appreciation, we're getting huge cash flow. We're buying at like 7 to 8 cap, but we're refinancing that new value and recouping our capital, which is one of our secret sauce at HoneyTree. Yeah. We're taking that equity and we're buying next deals.
And what are you guys seeing? And again, these are kind of, I'm not even going off my sheet of questions here. This is just, I'm curious now, but what are you guys seeing when on the refi, or what are you expecting to see on the refi in terms of cap rates? Are the caps staying relatively the same around that 6, 7,
they come 8? They come down a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're looking to exit finance at 100% loan to cost.
Yep.
75% loan to value, and somewhere in between 25 to 30 year amort and a 1.4 to 1.5 debt coverage ratio. But thankfully, because the cap rates are so high, like we're well above that, which is where this big cash flow comes from. Completely unheard of in Southern Ontario.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and and I think that's definitely a more of a Quebec thing. Like I know we've been looking at some hotels in Ontario, and depending where it is, but cap rates are much more compressed as well. And so it makes it even like, and I know you mentioned originally, right? Just buying a straight hotel, saying I'm running it as a hotel, is a kind of high risk, high reward investment.
Yeah.
And then especially when you're coming in at a low compressed cap for Ontario, it's just it for me at least, I look at it and go, how is this going to work? Like this is
it's very challenging.
Yeah.
And, so that's what we love Quebec for, those reasons.
Yeah.
It's a much better valuation. We're buying at about $300 to $350 a square foot, and which is insane. Downtown urban locations. It's incredible.
In one of the second largest city in Canada.
Yeah, unless there's other investors on listening to this, and then it's, well, don't go to Quebec. We don't want them.
No.
And that's understandable on the residential side, but even the residential side, you get awesome valuations. But specifically for the hotel market, that is the place to be.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I mean, Montreal's tourism numbers are one of the highest in Canada as well.
Quebec City was the most visited city in Canada last year. We have an acquisition coming up there in May, and we have 2 deals that we're about to lock up as well. Right. And so Quebec City is looking like another great city to get some big cash flow and a quick burst strategy.
Yeah. And so do you guys both speak French? Mark?
I speak more than Dave.
Okay. I get roasted for my French.
Yeah.
Any French at all, other than ordering a double.
Right.
But
and that hasn't been any issues, because I know that's another thing which I was speaking with an investor about the other day, and we were talking about investing in Quebec, and one of the biggest things that stopped them, like the numbers were beautiful, property was awesome, but they just said, well, I don't speak French. Like we're like, how do we get by that hurdle? So I was hoping to touch on that.
Well, the same as with any other investor. I mean, because if you're investing in Ontario, you have a team. You have a team that has lawyers. You have a team that has property managers, mortgage brokers, realtors. You have a team that you invest in. Well, we have a team as well. We just know that our team has to be bilingual, especially because Dave and I aren't 100% bilingual. I mean, I can get by, but when I'm reading legal documents in French,
yes, and I'm not talking about picking up the phone and calling a realtor and trying to make your way through that conversation. That's totally fine, right?
No,
broken English, broken French, that will make it happen. But when it comes to legal documents, right? When you're looking at the like you guys said, all the legislation around landlord and tenant or hotel stay and like that's got to be a doozy as is. You don't need to throw another language in there.
You know what? It's a completely different animal. And for anyone that is wanting to invest in Quebec, you have to do your homework, and it will take time. And I mean, we're so happy that we got in there early when we did, because we're probably one of the earlier people from Ontario going to Quebec, specifically in hotels. But, we've built it. And so for anybody that's listening that wants to benefit from the province of Quebec, I mean, just give us a call. We're already there, and we've already gotten over that hurdle for you guys.
Yeah. And that's, I think, some tremendous value that your, HoneyTree can bring to the table there, right? Where even myself, I would say, man, that's I'm looking at investing in the States, and even I know it's the same language, but all the same thing, right? It's that hurdle where, new lawyer, new accountant, new corp structure.
It's new everything. Like, for example, a 1-bedroom apartment in Quebec isn't called a 1-bedroom. It's called a 3.5. Well, who knows what a 3.5 is? A 2-bedroom's a 4.5. And so you need to learn the whole thing entirely, right? And
so explain that to me. Sorry, David.
So it's the quantity of rooms in a space, right? So it's like, if you say you're a bachelor and you have a small kitchen and a bathroom and a bedroom, that's 2.5 rooms. The bathroom's always half, right? So if you have a living room, a kitchen, a bedroom, and a bathroom, that's a 3.5. You add another bedroom, that's a 4.5. If you add a third bedroom, that's a 5.5. If you add another living room, that's a 6.5.
The fun part,
I'm out. That's enough for me to not make you go.
I know, right? It's completely different, but the valuations are there, right? So,
right on.
But don't ask what it's called if you end up having a 2-bedroom with 2 baths.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Let me get my calculator out. Give me a second here.
Yeah. That's right.
No, that's all right. But yeah, you know what? Every market's going to be a little different, right? Like even coming from Toronto to outside of Toronto, in Toronto, a +1 can be considered a den, right?
Yeah.
In +1 outside of Toronto is usually a basement bedroom, right?
That's right.
So,
yeah.
A little
Every
bit
market.
different. So yeah, do your research, right? And I guess that's the lesson.
Even if you're going down the States and getting into different cities, every city will have its intricacies.
Yeah.
And so you're really becoming a local expert of that market.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, when going down to the States, right? Like I'm not going to go down there and try to reinvent the wheel by any means. I don't think you ever need to reinvent the wheel. I think partnering up with a good group or some guys that are already doing it, right? Like I think that's the special sauce for everybody else, right?
That's right. Yeah. Find people that are really good at it and just work with them.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about the hotel strategy. We kind of went that 10,000 foot level, but let's break it down now. So where are you guys at today? I know you have a couple hotels, correct me if I'm wrong, under renovation or potentially even refinanced at this point. Where are you guys in the process? What's the next one you're looking to do? And then we can kind of dive into what I wanted to talk about for the second half of this podcast, which is the how you're purchasing, right? How are you structuring your debt? What's your capital stack? And we'll go there.
Absolutely. So we've acquired 3 hotels to date, all in Montreal. We have our 4th closing in Quebec City at the end of May. We just recently partnered with addyinvest.com.
Yep.
And they funded our second hotel deal, 874 Sherbrooke, which did very well. It sold out very quickly. We actually have another Addy that's dropping March 29th, which we're very excited about. We're hosting a meetup with the guys there on April 1st. And so that's going very, very well. We're also looking at some cool things. I'm not sure if I should get too ahead of myself, but some sort of collaboration with Addy, where if you're a hotel guest and you enjoyed your stay, well, our digital concierge is very powerful. It can actually sell stuff through the platform. We can sell Addy memberships to our guests. And if you say, hey, this was a great stay, I want to give you guys a 5-star review, we're going to thank you with a free Addy membership, and you can actually own a piece of that real estate. That's a pretty cool little collaboration there. And that's a little tidbit that we're working out right now. It's not real yet, but that's something that's happening in the background.
And the app you're talking about now, is that something you guys developed yourself? Is that off the shelf? What does that look like? Yeah,
so we partnered with a tech company. There's a couple guys out there. One of the biggest companies that are leading in this space is called Sonder. Okay. Sonder is a Montreal tech company, and they're basically the hotel lease version of Airbnb. They will lease an entire hotel, turn it into a digital concierge that looks and feels like Airbnb, and they're doing this all over the world.
Right.
We are using one of their competitors who creates a white label product for us. Right. And when we acquire one of these hotels, we build in the technology, we build in the water sensors, the smart water shutoff valves, the smart electrical panels, the noise sensors, the fire detectors, everything. And it gets built into this system, this ecosystem. And when you're a guest that's arriving, you have the opportunity to download this application, or you can use it just through the web browser. Mm-hmm. And this thing is communicating with you. It's bringing you through the guest experience. It's telling you where the best restaurants are in the area, and it's guiding you to that 5-star review. And so that's something that was really important to our strategy is having a great guest experience and actually having this application.
And I think that's probably the most, maybe not the most important part. A clean room is nice, but it's a very, very important part of the deal, right? And making so out of, and I'm sure you've been operating now at least one hotel or 2 hotels or a couple rooms. Is that app in progress right now? Is it done? Are you using it? What's been the feedback on that?
So we haven't launched this app yet specifically for one of our completed hotels because we actually haven't finished building our first one yet.
Gotcha.
What we have done is use other kind of temporary solutions. Keypad, obviously very important one, but there's still that manual process of sending the guest, okay, here's your code. Then someone needs to go and change it afterwards. It's a very labor intensive process. And it works for now, But it's not what the final product is. And so we're not quite there yet. We're very close to finishing our first deal, 874 Sherbrooke. Yep. And that should be live this June 1st for guests to stay using this application.
Right. Awesome. We'll do a follow-up once you guys are up and running and operating, and you can tell me more about the app, because that's actually a very, very exciting thing for me. I think that's, efficiency, right? Like that's where you're going to really set yourself apart from the rest of the crowd, right? How many hotels are in Montreal, right? How many hotels are in Quebec in general? I don't know the number. I'm sure a lot. So to be able to set yourself apart with that, and give that guest experience, that's something that myself and my partners here are trying to go through ourselves, right? So we're looking for something very similar to that, on a lighter scale, because when you're looking at a campground versus a hotel, there's a lot of difference. But I like that, and
I'm more than happy to tell you more about it. I mean, the big thing is internet connection. So hopefully you have good Wi-Fi in the campground there. That would be my only concern for you, is like you need some really good fiber optic internet to run this thing.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's very interesting. Yeah, most definitely. I think there's a follow-up podcast due with that type of stuff. But so what's been your that's where you are. That's the app you're using. But what's been your acquisition strategy, right? I know you mentioned a little bit about, raising capital, like here and there, but walk me through that, right? I'm oblivious to that. So if, again, as much as you want to share, walk me through how that works, because that's, I think, what we can add a lot of value to the listeners for today.
So as far as, two components. One component is the property itself. And then the second component is the money. So when it comes to the property, the age-old adage is location, location, location.
Right.
That matters here as well. So we're wanting to buy properties that are well located, and we look at the location in terms of tourism. We look at the location in terms of transit, because that's obviously very important. But we're also looking at location in terms of proximity to post-secondary education, because that's something that we haven't even touched on yet either. But we have the ability to, if we want, to run these as student rentals from September to May, and then run them as short-term rentals from May to September. So we like anything else, whether it's a house or an apartment building or a hotel, you want it in a good location. You want it to be structurally sound. It can be cosmetically dated. That's where we add value. But you want it to be structurally sound, in a good location, have good access to transit, and be generally where people want to be. So that's the first part, the component when it comes to the actual building itself.
Right.
When it comes to financing, that's the capital stack that we can talk more about as well.
And one thing I want to add to that is, there are all kinds of hotel operators that have not changed in the past 20 years. In fact, hotels have not changed themselves since like the 50s. They still have the front desk, they still have the key card. And this is a very old, antiquated system. And so we're finding boutique hotel owners who don't want to bother with the construction. They don't want to learn the new systems. They just want out. And so what we're doing is we're giving them an opportunity to exit at a good price, especially in a pandemic. It's really hard to exit. We're taking that weight off their shoulders, but we're also bringing new life back into the strategy. And so that's one of the really important things here is it an older, under-operated boutique hotel? Is there the ability to increase the revenue through new design, new aesthetic? But can we actually decrease the operating expenses through our technology?
Right.
And so this is the really nitty-gritty of analyzing a deal, is can you do these things, and who are you buying it from?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're buying a business and you're increasing value to a business. And so how are you doing that? You're increasing the revenue, or you're decreasing the expenses. And so those are some of the more nitty-gritty of what you need to look for.
Yeah, not to mention just owning real estate on probably some of the best street corners and best streets in town, right? Usually hotels don't pop up in the rougher neighborhoods or the tertiary of the city. They end up, smack dab in the middle. So that's
right.
Yep. That's a very cool play for that. And I like that, right?
I think we're around the same age, Jacob. Like, we're millennials. We missed out on Toronto. We missed out on downtown Toronto. I would have loved to bought Ossington, Queen and Ossington, but I can't. And
Yeah.
so, or rather, it's not a great deal anymore. So I'm going to go to Quebec and Montreal specifically, where my crystal ball tells me that will be like Toronto in 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start buying up as much of it as I can.
Very interesting. And when it boils down to the capital stack, right? So like, and I don't mind getting into the details here with you guys, right? I know it's the listeners like it. I've had more requests for, hey, break down, let's do some case study kind of stuff. But so let's go through your first one that you acquired, or whatever one you want to pick. But because I'm assuming there's going to be some overhead here, right? First off, you got to purchase it. Then you got your renovation cost. You have your other costs in there, I'm sure, to set it up. How are you guys? Is this all private equity? Is this cash? What's your approach for this?
Well, just before we jump into that, one of the key things that we do with any of our acquisitions is we actually give it a slush fund or a reserve fund equal to 1 year's of expenses.
Right.
So we know that we're going to be closing it down for renovations. We know that that we want to be very conservative in our numbers. We want to treat our investors' money very, very well and make sure that we do a good job with our investors' money because they've trusted us with their money. So one of the biggest things we do is build in that reserve fund for 1 year. So that's mortgage debt, that's property tax, insurance, utilities, everything. We build in a really good reserve fund so that we're well funded, well capitalized, so that we can make sure that we can keep going throughout the renovations and come out very well the other side.
Yeah, and what David mentioned earlier was, the turnaround time seems a little bit closer to 6 months than a year.
Yep.
Because you don't have to do any evictions. You're not, kicking people out of their home. It's actually quite a simple, healthy process.
There is no renoviction. There is no cash for keys.
Yeah.
We're not taking housing away from cities, and so even from like a social environmental type of view, this is not the big mean investor coming in and kicking out grandmas that are and forcing them into other apartments that are where they can't afford the rent.
Yeah.
But again, we're very conservative. We expect it to take 6 to 8 months.
Yep.
We budget a year.
Yeah.
We actually forecast the deal to be 2 years. When we bring our investors in, we're saying like, hey guys, we can get this done within 1 year, but the expectation is set at 2 years.
Always. Yeah. No, and I think that's a really smart strategy, right?
But we keep enough capital for 1 year of zero operations. If it's sat there doing nothing for a year, we're adequately capitalized.
Right.
Which is a very important part of it. And even with that, we're still able to hit our target ROIs, which are far more attractive than Ontario multifamily.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. And so just sort of, coming full circle and wrapping this thing, up here, is there anything you guys feel that I didn't mention about this product? Because again, I think it's very exciting, but I'd love to ask you now, what do you want people to know about this product that helps you guys out or helps them out, and let's have kind of free flow conversation. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. This is a newly emerging asset class. Yeah. It's been known as the extended stays. It's also been known as a digital concierge. We've been calling it Airbnb multifamily, but there really is a new asset class that's emerging. Right. One thing that makes this so on trend is if you look at how expensive it is for young people to live. Mm-hmm. Young people can barely afford their rent. How do they travel? How do they do all these things they want to do and still have a great life? By having our suites that have ensuite kitchens, ensuite bathrooms, and even sometimes ensuite laundry, you're actually able to travel for less. You can cook 3 meals a day at home. You can travel with less because you can do your laundry, which means you're going to more cities and you're doing more stuff. Yep. So one thing that's really on trend is that this is kind of like right in the middle ground, a very high value, moderate cost, and guests can actually stay longer and travel longer and do more. That's something that's really on trend with this asset.
Mm-hmm. No, so I did a fair bit of traveling right out of high school, and a big thing that you just mentioned, a big thing actually that saves a lot of money is being able to cook for yourself,
Yeah.
Right? Now I was traveling on a budget, so it was, beans and macaroni, but I needed somewhere that had a stove to cook it. So
yeah,
I would actually go and hunt out and specifically stay in parts of town where I could get either a serviced apartment, which I think was the kind of the older terminology for what you guys are doing, right? So give me a kitchen with a bed.
Yeah.
And I'll stay there over that, hotel who doesn't have that option, because I just couldn't afford to be eating out every day.
Yeah.
Right? And so I firsthand, I agree with you that your statement there. I think
that pairs very well with our partnership with Addy, because if you're a young person who can barely afford your rent and can barely afford to travel, well, you're probably not going to be owning your home.
Yep.
And so here's this hotel now. It's like, okay, I can now invest $1,500 in this property. I technically own it. It's going to increase demand for that property. We had almost 800 people invest in our first deal.
Yep.
And so, we want to have an audience of thousands of people who come and stay at their own hotel. And then this can be the asset that they own.
Yeah.
And they'll likely take better care of it. They'll stay there longer. They'll tell people about it, and they actually have personal benefit.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that's really exciting about our partnership with Addy, and something that we're hoping to curate over the next year.
Yeah.
Is that yeah.
Sorry. And I'm just very curious. So can you explain what Addy is or how it works for people that haven't heard of it or don't understand?
Yeah.
Like, I'll be honest, I don't know much about it, right? I know Mark's mentioned it to me a couple of times and what you guys are doing there with it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So AddyInvest.com is probably my favorite real estate company, and I own a real estate company. They're a tech company based out of Vancouver. What they do is they invest in great real estate projects in Canada with great GPs, and they buy units, LP units of that company, and chop them up into $1 increments.
Yep.
And allowing anybody and everybody to invest into real estate. This is for people who missed out on the boat and they can't get into the market. Well, now here's your chance. Go sign up for Addy. It's $25 per year for a membership, and become a member. And now you can invest in these amazing deals. And our hotels are being featured on AddyInvest.com. And
actually, so we'll even give Jake a link so that any of his listeners will pay for their first year's membership if anybody invests through Jake's webcast.
Yeah.
So sorry, Mark. Just say that again. What was that? Hold on. Let me hit record. Give me a second.
So I mean, we'll go ahead and we'll give you a link that you can send out to your listeners, and anybody that signs up through that link. We'll probably have to limit it because I'm sure you've got millions of listeners there, Jake. So
they're gonna come in hordes, so you better watch out. Yeah,
we'll limit it to the first couple hundred people that sign up for Addy memberships. Right. We will pay for their first year's membership, which is normally $25, and that will allow them to invest in not just our deals, but any of the deals that Addy has. I mean, Addy is, to put it succinctly, Addy is real estate crowdfunding.
Yep.
So you don't need to be an accredited investor. Like, normally the people that have invested with us, like our investors, obviously close friends and family, but otherwise the only people that have been able to invest with us are accredited investors. So by investing through Addy, you don't need to be an accredited investor. You don't need to make a couple $100,000 a year to qualify. Anybody can invest through crowdfunding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you heard it here, folks. That's no. We'll definitely, in the show notes, we'll put a link to that. I'll put a link. So if anybody wants to learn more about what you guys are doing, honeytree.com.ca. Where can they find you?
HoneyTreeGrow.ca.
Okay.
Book a call with us. Sign up for our email list. We want to tell you guys about what we're doing. We will be launching our mutual fund trust in the near future. And so we'll be able to accept registered funds. And we're looking to grow very quickly. There is a very short window for this hotel asset specifically. It seems like the pandemic may be ending. Like, today's the first day Ontario has removed the mask mandate, which I'm thrilled about. I think it's going to be a small window where we can continue to buy these great real estate assets. So if you're even thinking about it, give us a call, because there won't be a heck of a lot of deal flow like there is in the multifamily world. So right now it's kind of like, let's feast while we can and all grow together.
Yeah, I know for sure. Right. And things, we'll see what happens, right? Things are changing, and then now we got a war here for,
exactly.
So there's always factors, right?
There's always something, right?
And so speaking of that, where's your next move? So after, let's say, you guys grab another couple hundred hotels, and then, where is the next investment for you guys? You're going to try to replicate this model elsewhere, out of country, out of province?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what we'll do is we will contact other 1 to 2 star boutique hotels all over the world, and we're going to present our strategy to them. One of the important things that we can do is we can convert their hotel for them, or they can sell it to us and invest with us. So Jake, if say you have a hotel, you've had it for 20 years, HoneyTree has this cool strategy, but you want it, but you don't want to do it. Yeah. Sell us your hotel and keep that capital with us, and we're going to convert this over to a digital concierge extended stays for you. So in the immediate future, we have 3 hotels in Montreal. We have 3 more in Quebec City that we're looking at. And from here, we want to go to Toronto. I mean, admittedly, Toronto doesn't have the exact same product that Quebec has, so it's a little more challenging. But we will start to look at other major cities. And one strategy that we do is I actually just go onto Saunders' website and see which cities they're going to, and I'm just going in right behind them and exploring the real estate that they is likely too small for them, but it makes sense for us.
Yeah, and I think I say it 100 times. I think I say it every episode, but I always say, don't reinvent the wheel, right? Like,
that's right.
People have done this. Just get on the right stream for it and go, right?
Yeah, it's Starbucks strategy. Yeah. I mean, people talk about Starbucks spends millions of dollars in doing market research about where they're going to place their next store.
Yeah.
Well, if you see a Starbucks popping up, then you in what appears to be not the nicest neighborhood, there's probably a good chance that they feel that there's going to be a lot of gentrification going on in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Mark just saved everybody $100 million in research there. So it's so true. It's so true. And no, I was asking that question, Dave, because I was thinking, I love, Montreal's nice, great city and all, but I think if I had to take a business trip to go see my hotel as an investor, maybe Turks and Caicos would be nice, somewhere in Mexico.
Absolutely.
So like that.
Yeah.
And we certainly have desires to grow, not just out of Quebec, but and into other markets. It's a matter of finding the right product for the right price and the right market.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're targeting those little boutique hotels, the ones that are mom and pa owned and operated, that structurally sound, cosmetically dated, in fantastic neighborhoods. And once it's just a matter of finding them and then building the team out in that market so that we can service them properly.
Right on. Well, I've exhausted my questions. I think I've learned a ton about what you guys are doing. And again, I'm sure we only scratched the surface, but pleasure speaking to both of you. Is there anything you guys want to leave this off with?
Yeah, so for anybody that is intrigued by what we're doing, contact us at honeytreegrow.ca. Book a call with either Mark or I. We are growing. We are bringing in new capital. Our MFT will be launched in about, what do you say, Mark? April, May, roughly?
Hopefully, yes, depending on the speed of years.
For accredited investors that are frustrated with Southern Ontario multifamily real estate market, we have something that's just as exciting, just as reliable, rather, in terms of that safety net, but makes far more cash flow. And so we'd love to tell you more about it. Let's book a call and let's start talking about some numbers.
Right on. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you.